Let's give the user a way to delete the reminders. We'll add a little JSX to our components so that way the user has a button to click that allows them to delete a reminder from the list. We'll have a very simple div right here, and let's give it some class names. This is going to be a list item component and also be called delete button. Now right next to it, we're also going to call it list item because we're going to apply two stylings at once to both of these so that they render next to each other. So for our delete button, we could have a very simple X. However, let's use a little Unicode icon to make it look a lot better. This Unicode icon is and #x2715, and it basically looks like a very neat multiplication sign. And don't forget about that semicolon. So when we're thinking of deleting a reminder, that definitely sounds like an action that changes the state. This means we're adding to our Redux logic in the application. Whenever we add Redux logic, we need to really think about it in 3 steps. First, we define a constant. Secondly, we make an action creator. And third and finally, we amend or create a reducer. So to start it all, remember, we need to create a new constant. So head to your constants.js file. Let's export a new constant and call it delete reminder equals delete reminder. Now we'll write the actual function which handles deleting our reminders within index.js of actions. First, let's export a new constant called delete reminder. And for now, let's just have an empty anonymous arrow function. Now let's think about it for a minute. In order to delete reminders, we'll need a way to identify them. Luckily, we created an ID for each reminder within our reducer so that we could specify them. So let's add an ID parameter to this argument. Now let's start defining our action. Of course, we'll need to import delete reminder now from our constants. And then this action, of course, needs a type, and this type will be delete reminder. Now we need to think about what info we want our action to have. Let's just have ID. And this key will be ID now, as well as the value that we pass in delete reminder. Before we move on, let's say console.log deleting in actions our action, so that we have a way to debug in the future. And finally, let's return that action. Next, we got to hook it up to our application. So let's import delete reminder from actions now. Now we need to add this to our map dispatch to props function. And remember, we use a neat Redux trick to actually get rid of that map dispatch to props declaration. So we can just place delete reminder next to add reminder here. And now we see the beauty of ES6 coming in handy. We have multiple keys, but it really shortens down our code when we don't have to specify every time what the value is of these keys, since they're just the same. Now let's hook up a helper method to the click of our JSX button that we set up earlier so we can see what happens. First, let's add a delete reminder helper method. This one will also have an ID key. Let's console.log deleting in application this ID. And for now, let's console log props just to check if we're actually having delete reminders showing up in our map dispatch to props. Finally, let's hook up an onClick event to the div that we created earlier. So we'll say onClick an anonymous arrow function to call this dot delete reminder. And remember, we need to pass the ID, so we'll say reminder.id. Let's save. We'll have a new reminder. Go grocery shopping. Let's inspect the element first of all, and then click the X button. Boom. So this dot props, we see that we have a delete reminder actually dispatched, and deleting an application, we see the ID that we want to delete. Great. Now we added these CSS elements, so let's go ahead and define those. In list item, I want the display to be inline block so that way they align side to side. And then our delete button is going to float on the right and have a padding left of 5 pixels, so that way it looks pretty nice. You'll see. Oh, I forgot to specify that float is separated by a colon. And one more time, let's say go grocery shopping. Boom. Great. So now that we have our action creator actually dispatching delete reminder, we need to amend the reducer to actually change the application based on this dispatched action. So see you in the next video.